We're given a triangle over here, and we're given, now make sure that with this question, whenever you're given the hypotenuse, ensure that the hypotenuse is bigger than the others. So this is, let's say, 150. Let's say this was 120. Alpha x, theta x alpha and 90 degrees. And the question says solve for theta and alpha. All right, so you can use Pythagoras theorem, trigonometry, SOHCAHTOA, etc. See if you can get that one. All right, let's go through this one now. So what we have here, we're going to first label the sides of this triangle. All right, so this is my angle. We can choose opposite, adjacent, hypotenuse. But because I know two sides and I want to find the other side, we're going to use Pythagoras theorem. Remember what Pythagoras theorem is? Pythagoras theorem says that if you have a right angle triangle, and this is A, and this is B, and this is C, then A squared plus B squared will always equal C squared. If I take the two shorter sides and ensure that they're shorter, will equal the longer side squared once you've added them up. All right, so let's go ahead and find x. All right, so part one, we want to find x using Pythagoras, right? All we have to do is substitute into the Pythagoras theorem. So we're going to get x squared plus 120 squared will equal 150 squared. And so we subtract 120 squared on both sides. You can square it on your calculator and subtract it afterwards if you want. All right, this will come to x squared equals 150 squared minus 120 squared. All right, and then now it's 8,100. So x squared is equal to 8,100. So we square root both sides, and what is the square root of 8,100? It's going to come 2. And that comes to 90. So x will equal 90. Remember, 9 times 9 is 81. So x is equal to 90. We're now done with x. So we solve for alpha and theta. We have found the value of x as well, which is equal to 90. Now we're going to go ahead and try and solve for theta and alpha. Knowing that this side is equal to 90 units, we can even use the word units if you're not given centimeters or meters. All right, so 90 units. Now, using 90, 120, and 150, I can find alpha or theta. Now, it would be best to use what they gave us, right? Because if I made an error over here for some reason, then if I use that error, it'll produce errors in my angles. So ideally what I'm going to do is use 120 and 150. I'm going to label this the hypotenuse, and I'm going to label this adjacent. All right. And I'm going to solve for this angle first, because this angle is adjacent this way, and the hypotenuse is opposite that way. So for this here, we're going to have, firstly, let's go with saw, car, and tour. And we can see we have the adjacent and the hypotenuse. So we're going to use C, which stands for cos, right? So we're going to go ahead and write down cos of the angle is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. So cos of the angle, we don't know what it is, equals to 120 over 150. And we're going to now move cos onto the other side using shift on my calculator, open brackets, fraction button, 150 in the denominator, 120 in the numerator. We'll shoot out the following. So 120 at the top, 150 at the bottom, close your bracket, comes to 36.87 degrees. 36.87 degrees, and that's going to be my angle theta. All right, and this is part 2. All right, let's call this one part 2, finding theta. So we use cos to find theta, and now we know this angle is 36.87 degrees. In order to find alpha, we can do this in many different ways. We know all the different sides. What we can do, we can use this as the opposite and this as the hypotenuse. And in that case, we would then go ahead and use sine of this angle to find alpha. But the quickest way is to remember that angles in a triangle add up to angles in a triangle add to 180 degrees. So therefore, alpha plus theta plus 90 degrees equals to 180 degrees. So therefore, alpha plus theta is equal to 90 if I minus 90 from both sides. Now we just worked out theta. So alpha plus 36.87 equals 90. And so now we subtract it from both sides. Alpha is equal to 90 minus 36.87. Put that on a calculator, and let's see what we got. So 90 minus 36.87 will come to 53.13. 53.13 degrees, and that's going to be alpha. All right, angles in a triangle. That's method one, right? I mean, method two of getting alpha would be, for example, if I have to go with method two of part three over here, I could label this as opposite because that's my opposite side and that's my hypotenuse, and use sine, right? So I would then go sine of alpha equals opposite over hypotenuse. Alpha is what we're looking for. Opposite will be 120. Hypotenuse will be 150. And so therefore, alpha will equal shift sine 120 over 150. Putting that on a calculator, pressing shift, so shift sine, fraction button, 120 divided by 150 will come to 53.13. So alpha is equal to 53.13 degrees. Okay, which is the same. Method number three. All right. I'm just going to add method number four in here anyway. All right. So, I mean, method number three. This is method two. Method number three for part three would be, instead we come across and we use the following. We use adjacent. All right, it's getting a bit messy now, but we got adjacent and hypotenuse. Adjacent and hypotenuse is cos. So we could use cos of alpha is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse using the angle that, I mean, the side that we've created or that we found, 90 units, substituted in there. And so cos of alpha is going to be equal to 90 over 150. And so that becomes shift cos 90 over 150. We then put that on our calculator and we press shift cos. So shift cos of 90 divided by 150, and it'll be 53.13 degrees, as expected. So look carefully now. We've got three different ways to find alpha, and we could also get three different ways to find theta. I just showed you alpha, right? So method one is angles in a triangle, add up to 180. Method number two, I use sine. And method number three, I use cos. And it's three different ways of getting alpha. So you have three different chances of getting it, and you just got to do one of them. All right, in a test situation. Okay. So in this question, you're given also a right angle triangle. You're given two sides, and that's it. You're going to find remaining angles. You're going to find the other side. You can use any method that you want. You can use trigonometry, Pythagoras theorem, etc. All right, give it a go. So for this question over here, what we're going to do is, let's find x first. All right, so we're going to find x, and that's going to be x squared plus 40 squared equals, sorry, x squared is your hypotenuse, so it's going to equal 40 squared plus 30 squared. That's 1,600 plus 300 times 300, which is 900. It comes to 2,500. And so we square root both sides, and we get x to be 50 centimeters. Okay, so the value of x is 50 centimeters. Next, now that we found x, we want to find theta. All right, so x is going to be 50 centimeters. We can find alpha as well. Finding theta, let's suppose I use this side length over here, which is my opposite, and this side here, which is my adjacent. And then if I got saw, car, and tour, I have opposite and I have adjacent. All right, but I don't have the hypotenuse, so those guys are out, so it's going to be 10. Write down 10 of theta equals to 40 over 30. And so theta will equal shift tan 40 over 30. We then put that on a calculator, and it comes to, so shift button first, tan, open the bracket, press the fraction button, 40 and 30 below, and it comes to 53.13 degrees. Now that we have that, if I want to find alpha, then angles in a triangle is going to add up to 180 degrees. So alpha plus 90 degrees plus theta is equal to 180 degrees. Alpha plus 90 plus 53.13 equals 180 degrees. And so we subtract it from both sides of the equation. So 180 minus 90 minus 53.13 will come to 36.87 degrees, and that'll be alpha. Now remember, there are many other ways of solving or to get to that point. These are just one of the ways. All right, you can also use the other side. You could start from the known side. You could use your 50 centimeters in there as well. So remember, just like the previous example before this, there are many ways, especially you can see part 1, part 2, and part 3.